Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Weisberg, Deputy Director of Perry World House, which is Penn's hub for global engagement and the convener of today's conversation with our distinguished guests. I'm also a professor of philosophy, and most importantly, as it relates to this event, the administrator here at Penn charged with implementing the recommendations of the two university task forces that grew out of the aftermath of October 7th attacks, the Task Force on Anti-Semitism and the Presidential Commission on Countering Hate and Building Community. As a fifth-generation Philadelphian who's raising two children in this city, I think deeply about these issues and about how we can build a diverse, pluralistic community that values and indeed encourages debates about issues that feel and are quite existential. That notion of working across polarizing lines to achieve better, more peaceful outcomes is precisely why we're here today, to hear from an Israeli leader and a Palestinian leader about potential pathways to a different future for both peoples. His Excellency Ehud Olmert served as Prime Minister of the State of Israel from 2006 to 2009. He also served in the Israeli Knesset from 1973 to 2009 and was twice elected mayor of Jerusalem, serving from 1993 to 1998. In November of 2007, he attended the Annapolis Peace Conference led by President George W. Bush, and in 2008 he proposed a peace agreement with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas on the basis of a two-state solution. He was born in 1945 in Israel and is a graduate of the Hebrew University in psychology, philosophy, and law. We will also be joined by Zoom from His Excellency Nasser Al-Kidwa, who is scheduled to be here on Zoom. He was originally scheduled to be here in person, but tonight he's actually calling in from Ramallah because Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has called him back into service in the wake of the recent ceasefire agreement. We're lucky to be able to hear from someone on the ground who's not only been involved in the peace process for many years, but who's actually currently in the government of the Palestinian Authority. Dr. Al-Kidwa is a prominent member of the Palestinian political party Fatah, a member of the Palestinian National Council, and the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Palestinian National Authority. He also served as the PLO Palestine Observer to the United Nations in New York from 1991 to 2004. He was born in Gaza in 1953 and is a graduate as a dentist from Cairo University. Olmert and Al-Kidwa have put forth a joint proposal for a political solution to the Israeli-Palestinian historical conflict, and that will be the core of our discussion today. And we are really lucky that today's conversation will be moderated by Mark Mazzetti, a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter for the New York Times, who has covered the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in great depth. He's currently on leave from the Times writing a book about the lead up to the October 7th attacks. I want to acknowledge and thank our co-sponsors for today's event, the Andrea Mitchell Center for the Study of Democracy, the Christopher H. Brown Center for International Politics, the Middle East Center, and the SNF Paideia program. They underscore the breadth of people and institutes at Penn who are working on dialogue and compassion in the region. Our two distinguished guests today embody a saying which will be known to some of you from the Mishnah, that it's not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you free from starting it. Just because the challenge is daunting does not give us license to ignore it. So we are honored to be joined today by these two leaders who are living this mantra. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage and online.
Can everyone hear me? It's good to see you all. It's great to be here. Sorry for the brief delay. It wasn't at all a technological glitch. We were back there negotiating final status of peace in the Middle East. And here we are. We have big announcements to make tonight. Prime Minister Olmert, Dr. Al-Kidwa, it's a pleasure to be with you here this afternoon. And I wanted to start with to both of you who have been out and about for over a year talking about your plans for peace in the Middle East. Let me start with exactly 3 weeks ago, which is when President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu stood at the White House, and President Trump called it one of the great days possibly ever in civilization, with some typical Trump hyperbole. But it was about a week before there was an official announcement of a deal for the first phase of ending this war that's been going on for 2 years. And I want to ask both of you, Prime Minister Olmert, I'll start with you. Does this feel different, what's happening now, in terms of the moment of that we can be hopeful that there is going to actually be an end to the war?
Well, first of all, I'm happy to be here, and I'm very excited to have this opportunity together with my partner, Dr. Nasser Al-Kidwa,
Political partner,
to speak
political
to
partner,
you here
not
at the
partner.
University of Pennsylvania. I'd like to be very, very careful when asked about President Trump. It is true that the event is interesting and is promising. I can think of maybe 2 or 3 more events that happened in the last 3,000 years, which were almost as important and as exciting as the announcement about the 20 points for
His first 2 elections.
yes, no. Well, maybe the second. I don't know. But I think that let's not blow it out of its original proportion. What has been announced originally in this conference at the White House, participating him and Netanyahu, was a comprehensive agreement for end of the war in Gaza. This is not a peace treaty. This is not a peace agreement. This is not a peace proposal. These are 20 points which, if implemented, may bring an end, a permanent end, to the war in Gaza, which is very significant, which may not be one of the most important events in the last 3,000 years, but still for the people that remained alive after this very painful and bloody encounter, it certainly promises some chance for a better future. So this is not insignificant. It deserves a recognition and respect and thanks from everyone who cares and who wanted to bring an end to the war in Gaza. But this is just this and nothing else. Now, if it will be implemented, then it can certainly lay the foundations for what has to come afterwards. Now, what has to come afterwards is a major effort to start a dialogue for peace, comprehensive peace between Israel and the Palestinians. I hope that the president will not lose interest in the second phase of what may turn out, that he will be as interested and as dedicated and as committed to force the 2 sides and all the potential participants from the periphery, the Qataris, the Egyptians, the Turks, and whoever. I mean, he made a big conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, and he brought many leaders from everywhere, including the president of Indonesia. Good. In as long as the president will exercise his power of persuasion, which has been used effectively to force Netanyahu to apologize to the Qatari leadership and consequently to allow the Qataris to re-enter into the brokerage of this deal, and to eventually to force Netanyahu to accept the comprehensive agreement to end the war in Gaza. If he will take it one step further and will start to force the sides to enter into a dialogue about a comprehensive peace, it will be a turning point. It may become a turning point in the history of the Middle East. But considering the Middle East, considering the nature of the parties involved, considering the nature of the leaders involved, and considering the degree of consistency which has been manifested by Trump in other occasions, it remains to be seen how it will develop. I pray that Trump will do everything that we don't expect him to do, which is to carry on.
So, Dr. Al-Kidwa, I want to ask you your take on this moment, how it feels since the announcement of the agreement, and whether there is actual real reason for hope, and also to get your input on what Prime Minister Olmert said about what it takes to continue. His argument was what's absolutely essential is Trump remaining involved, keeping all parties focused, and do you agree with that being essential?
Yeah, in general, I agree with Prime Minister Olmert with regard to the importance of the agreement or the deal or the offer or the plan or whatever you want to call it, and also with regard to the what's needed now. So yes, it is important. Nevertheless, I think that the whole thing has been slowed now to a dangerous degree, and maybe we need to give it a push. And I can share with you what I have been trying to say to many parties here in Ramallah, which I think is essential. I'm pushing for a comprehensive vision that covers three subjects. The first subject is the position vis-a-vis Hamas. The second subject is the governance of Gaza. And the third subject is security. Now, the first subject, I think that it's not enough for Hamas to say that we don't want to govern. We don't want to participate in governance of Gaza. I think what needs to be understood is that we are entering a new situation, new era, and that Hamas has to agree to end its control over Gaza in all its forms. And that is to say, political, administrative, as well as security, which leads to putting the guns, putting the arms under the control, under the, not only the control, but it should own it, I think, the official Palestinian body that will govern Gaza. In return, I think we should keep the door open for structural transformation of Hamas towards a political party that might participate in the Palestinian political life under the Palestinian law, which should specify certain conditions in this regard. So it's kind of compromise. And to be frank, I think there are some people who are trying to reach some deals with Muslim Brotherhood, especially in Turkey and in Qatar. So we might as well try to speed up our actions and reach some kind of agreement before. Now, the second issue is governance. And in this regard, I need to remind you probably that the plan of Mr. Trump, of President Trump, states that there should be a board of peace headed by Mr. Trump himself, and then a board of directors headed by Mr. Tony Blair that would govern Gaza, effectively govern Gaza. And the third, there should be local body, and the language here is a bit confused, composed of Palestinians and non-Palestinians that then follow or deal with the daily life, such as, collecting garbage and water and things like that. I have to tell you very frankly that I don't accept number two. I don't accept the second at all, because any Palestinian part has to be governed by Palestinians only. You cannot have board of directors to govern Gaza. That is ridiculous, and it's not going to work, even if it does work at the beginning, because of the need of the Palestinian people in Gaza, needs to eat, needs to have medications, needs to have hospitals, Even if it works at the beginning, it's going to get stuck later on. Now, of course, we need to say what's the alternative. The alternative should be a new Palestinian body that is organically linked to the Palestinian Authority. And this sentence, this key sentence, is mentioned in our joint statement, Ehud, Olmert, and myself. How you can achieve that? We can achieve that through things like the president of the authority to appoint the head of the body. It can be achieved through things like, the employees of this new body are the employees of the authority, and it can be achieved through the preparation of elections everywhere in the Palestinian Authority, so we can guarantee that we don't slide to some kind of separation between Gaza Strip and the West Bank. The third issue, and I'm sorry that I took too long, the third issue is the security. And I have to say here that originally I was supportive of the idea of an Arab security presence, but obviously we are beyond that now. And it seems like there is a consensus for the, building an international force and having a Security Council resolution, although this does not make it a peacekeeping operation, but still Security Council resolution that would give the authority for that force. So this is okay, this is fine. And I have to say in this regard that we should complement this by having a Palestinian security force, probably in the average of 10 to 15,000 Palestinian policemen, which can be brought from different circles. This way, I think we can proceed, and from my initial contacts with many parties, I think that there is some kind of acceptance of the ideas that I have just mentioned. Thank you again, and I'm happy, of course, to be in Pennsylvania, albeit by Zoom, but of course, I'm happy also to be in the company of my political partner, Mr. Ehud Olmert. Thank you very much.
So we both agree that this tenuous peace is a good development, a great development after 2 years of war. There's much hard work to be done, and much of the hardest work has yet to be worked out. And you, as I said, have both spoken for some time together about how there ultimately needs to be a Palestinian state, two states. But I want to ask,
one already is there.
Okay, one is, right. So I want to talk about the reality of that now. And first of all, to both of you, first of all, to Prime Minister Olmert, you have a government in Israel that is made up of ministers, several of them who singularly refuse the idea of a Palestinian state. And Israeli politics have shown that, at least the public opinion polls show that the public is not supportive broadly of a Palestinian state. How is this politically realistic, given the politics of Israel? And also to Dr. Al-Kidwa, you spoke about a transition of Hamas to a political party that is accepted in some sort of political framework. How is that possible, where Hamas, in its DNA and its charter, refuses to accept the state of Israel? And so I'm just wondering how realistic this is, given what we've seen over the last 2 years, to both of you. Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. When you judge the spread of opinions today in Israel, and I'm talking primarily about Israel for obvious reasons. I'm not representing the Palestinians. I want to make peace with them. Then obviously, yes, you can say that it is not highly popular. Israel is still largely lives under the trauma of what happened on the 7th of October. 7th of October was one of the blackest days in modern history of the Jewish people. I don't think that since the Holocaust there was such a feeling of helplessness and of insecurity that suddenly engulfed everyone and threatened the basic foundations of what people thought about their security in the state of Israel. This is not something that can be changed rapidly and easily. However, I think I have to say it, although I think it's well known and it's obvious. Of course, the war in Gaza, as a result of what happened on the 7th of October, became inevitable and unavoidable. There is no question about it. There is no country in the world which would have tolerated this terrible attack on its citizens without responding in a manner, in an attempt to try and reach out for those who committed it and eliminate them. And that's what Israel was trying to do. And when we tried to do it, the international community at large was very much in favor of it. I remember my old friend Joe Biden talking in the most powerful and emotional manner to the Israelis. And the foreign ministers and the leaders from across the world, the Chancellor of Germany at that time, Scholz, the President of France, Macron, Prime Minister of Great Britain, Rishi Sunak at that time. And they all said Israel has a right to respond and reach out for everyone, knowing that the leaders of Hamas are hiding inside the most densely populated area in the world, and that reaching out for them almost inevitably will cause a collateral damage of a massive proportions, not just insignificant. It will be a massive collateral damage, and yet they said, yes, Israel has a right to do it. But of course, what happened on the 8th or the 20th of October, after the 7th of October, is not what it is today. And today, when we look at it, of course, there is no way that we can ignore the fact that more than 70 or 65 or 70,000 Palestinians were killed and 150 were injured, and that so many tens of thousands of them were not involved in terror. So this is a dramatic event starting as a result of the aggression and the brutality and the criminality and the murderous and atrocious actions by Hamas, and then followed up by a very aggressive and a very comprehensive and far-reaching Israeli response in order to reach out for them, in the course of which many, many, many people that were not supposed to be victims became victims of this. And the question now is, how can we overcome from both sides the trauma in order to build up something that will be different? And when we present in the course of this whole event, during the war, what we did, I think, was, I admire the courage of Dr. Al-Kidwa doing it together with me, that we stood up and signed together a document which calls for the end of the war in Gaza and also for the process of creating a comprehensive peace between us and the Palestinians on the basis of two states, Israel and Palestine. And everyone says, is it feasible? Is it serious? How can you overcome all of this? So number one, I say, look, we are veterans of bloodshed, of killing each other, of fighting each other, of trying to eliminate each other for generations. One thing we are not yet veterans of and experienced of is living peacefully alongside each other. Now, everything else we did, and what did it bring? Security, safety, freedom for the Palestinians, independence, recognition, nothing. So I think that what we need to do, which is what we are trying to do, but of course we are just the two of us, is to bring back into center stage of international politics, of the international agenda, the idea that there is a solution, there is a possible solution. We have to overcome the pains, we have to overcome the memories, the bad memories that we possess, both sides, and we need to be able to rid ourselves of the experiences of the past in order to be ready to look towards a different future, a future that offers hope for the younger generations of Palestinians and Israelis that are sick and tired of fighting and killing and trying to eliminate each other. And finally, only I want to say this in this context when I'm asked how feasible it is, how serious it is, how can you achieve it, and so on and so forth. Of course, we have to change the politics of both Israel and the Palestinians. And we have to, in my particular case, I have to say that I'm anxious to get rid of my government and have another government which will be more responsible and less arrogant and less overconfident and more prepared to make concessions out of a position of strength which has been manifested in such a glorious way by Israel in the last couple of years. It is not just, overcoming or defeating Hamas or Hezbollah. The state of Israel has dominated the skies of Iran 1,200 kilometers from the border of Israel. And the Iranians became helpless, these 80, 90 million people, power and empire. So Israel is strong enough to be able to face all the risks involved in making a concession towards the rapprochement and rehabilitation of the relations between us and the Palestinians. And finally, I just want to say this. There are people here, all of you are young enough, I'm older, but I can tell you, even I don't remember, but I know from reading history. They had someone said, after the Second World War, after 45, that the day will come soon in the 20th century that Germany and France will be the best of friends in Europe after what these two countries have been through in 2 world wars in the 20th century, killing millions and destroying and shattering everything. No one would have said it's possible. And it is possible and became possible. And I tell you something, the day that the Palestinians and Israelis will become partners, living alongside each other, is a matter of time and perhaps a shorter time than most of us think. But in order to go forward, we first of all have to want that it will happen, to dream that it will happen, to work that it will happen, and to take all the necessary risks in order to create it, because if we will not do it, it will not happen.
Dr. Al-Kidwa, I want to get you to talk about the political realities of the two states, as well as I want to add one other issue, which is in the Arab world, what the last 2 years since October 7th have meant for countries like Saudi Arabia, which, let's face it, sort of abandoned as a major issue the idea of a Palestinian state, how much it's reality that Saudi Arabia and others, the Gulf states in particular, will continue to press this as an issue, as even a precondition for normalization with Israel?
Let me first say that there is no alternative to the two-state solution, because the choices are either we accept the other side, the existence of the other side, and we are ready for compromises, and we are ready for political solutions. And in this case, the only political solution available is the two-state solution. Or we get into the hallucination of it's all mine and I don't recognize the other side at all, which is the recipe for the continued bloodshed and agony for everybody for years to come. I hope it's going to be the first, and I hope that we'll be able to do that. Of course, people are not ready because of the war, because nobody is thinking of making peace now, but everybody is thinking of taking revenge. And that is going to change the moment the war stops in definite way, which is not yet, although there were some important steps in that direction. When the war stops, everybody will start thinking about their positions and whether they were the right position to take and what they led to. And I think the door will open for much more support of the political compromise and the solution. Now, you also asked me about Hamas and the charter and things like that. Listen, I can make much more criticism than you in this regard, but I did not talk about having Hamas to participate in the Palestinian political life. I said the door should open for structural transformation into a political party that can participate in the Palestinian political life, which is a new entity, not militarized entity that could participate in the political life under the Palestinian law. So I'm not talking about Hamas, I'm talking about something new. And in any way, we need to think of solutions. It's not enough to say they are bad and then what? We need to find solutions. And as I told you, I think there are some people who are working with Muslim brothers, especially in Turkey and Qatar, to find those solutions. So we better find the solutions ourselves.
Can I ask you on this subject, because it still, to me, is unclear. We've been reporting.
Now, by the way, Saudi Arabia, I'm sorry,
Yes.
Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
You said that Saudi Arabia gave up on the Palestinian state. Frankly, I don't know where did you get this from. Only 2 weeks ago, Saudi Arabia and France organized a conference on the state of Palestine, and that led to the recognition of an important group of people. You might like that, you might hate that, but I think it's difficult to assume that Saudi Arabia gave up on the Palestinian state.
Yeah, I want to clarify what I was saying, that before October 7th, there was essentially a deal in place for normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel.
Yes.
That would not have required a Palestinian state. There was, the Palestinians, to my understanding, were largely set aside from being central players in a deal between the Saudis, the Biden administration, and the Netanyahu government. But obviously, since October 7th, the Saudis have played a much more prominent role. And that was my question, was whether the Saudis will stick to their support that they've shown in the last 2 years. But I wanted to ask a follow-up question on Hamas, which is still unclear in my mind, although we've continued to report on this, just why Hamas agreed to this at this time. Obviously, there was pressure, agreed to the ceasefire, the phase 1 of the deal. Obviously, there has been pressure from the Qataris, the Turks, etc. Is that the entirety of the answer? What else is to explain why Hamas agreed to this at this time?
It is not the entirety of the answer. The part of the answer is the situation in Gaza, the overwhelming destruction of Gaza, and the negative position by the population vis-a-vis Hamas. This is very important for Hamas, and of course, they want to change that. And the way to change that is to reach some kind of ceasefire and a change of the situation. But again, I said that it is not enough for Hamas to say, we don't want to govern, we don't want to participate in governance. There should be broader things, including giving up entirely their control over Gaza and, of course, finding a solution for the issue of arms.
If I may add, Mark, the 2 years after the 7th of October, fact remains that, as I've already mentioned before, 70% of the buildings in Gaza are flattened. They don't exist anymore. The extent of destruction is unbelievable. And this is a result of the military operation that Hamas started. The leadership of Hamas, from top to bottom, Yahya Sinwar, Mohammed Def, Ismail Haniyeh, Mohammed Sinwar, all the top brass, the mid-level and even the lower level of military command of Hamas were eliminated. They don't exist anymore. The rockets were almost completely destroyed. The tunnels largely destroyed. The launchers almost completely destroyed. The command positions almost completely destroyed. So Hamas had a good reason to seek, at least for a period of time, a ceasefire that could have provided them with the opportunity, perhaps from their point of view, of trying to recuperate and rebuild and somehow restore of what they lost from their point of view. And also, of course, the American pressure exerted by President Trump on the supporters of Hamas, particularly the Qataris and the Turks, was very helpful in convincing the Qataris that they may lose everything, which is not something that they were particularly anxious to, when he guarantees, and he guaranteed, that this is the end of the war. Now, what made Netanyahu agree?
That was my next question. That was going to follow up.
I looked at your eyes, Mark, I looked at your eyes, and I could see that they are asking, what this guy is talking about? What are you talking about, Hamas? Talk about Netanyahu. What made him?
I wanted to hear that, but I also want to hear why
okay.
Netanyahu went along with it.
I'll tell you something. Good or bad is a matter of opinion. I don't know. But Trump remains the one only person in the whole world which Bibi can still be assisted by. There is no one else. One of the unfortunate outcomes of the expansion of the activities and the arrogance of the operation of the Israeli government, and also of the statements made by some members of the Israeli cabinet, including Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and the others, that talk in a manner which alienate almost every person with a self-esteem, as we do in Israel as well. But when ministers, senior ministers in the cabinet say that every one of Hamas must be eliminated, and then they say there is no one in Gaza who is not Hamas, then when I'm interviewed for the international media, they say to me, now what is the inevitable interpretation of what they say? If every Hamas must be killed, and if everyone in Gaza is Hamas, then you have to kill all of Gaza. If that's what your ministers want, how can you not agree that you are committing a genocide, which we don't. We don't commit a genocide. We never wanted to commit a genocide. But unfortunately, the statements of some of the Israeli ministers can be interpreted in this manner, and this is terribly bad because it doesn't even reflect the real desire of what we are doing. What we wanted is security. What we wanted is to get rid of the leaders of the Hamas murderous organizations. And it started to be interpreted because of these ministers in such a way. So now the question is, how come in this context Netanyahu agreed? He didn't want to agree. He was forced to agree. He was forced to agree because Trump is the only one left that Netanyahu can be assisted by and be in close connection with. If he doesn't have Trump, he doesn't have anyone. Who? Macron? Who? Mark Carney from Canada? Who announced today that if Netanyahu will be over the skies of Canada, he will be forced down and be arrested according to the whatever, the International Court of Criminal Court's arrest warrant. Crazy, okay? So he didn't have a choice. Now, what I'm hopeful for, What I want is that Trump will use this power of persuasion that he possesses over Netanyahu to force him another step forward into what may start a process of peace negotiations. The agreement that was signed now is important. And as I said before, Trump deserves to be credited for it because no one else could do it. But this is not peace. This is only a fragile ceasefire that hopefully will become stable, and it hasn't been very stable. Over the last 3 days, we lost 2 soldiers in Gaza, and we killed quite a few in all kinds of skirmishes or confrontations. So it has to be strengthened and augmented in order to become stable. But then this is just this, and we want one step forward. And the only guy that can do it presently is President Donald J. Trump.
Well, so let me ask you on a follow-up about the political dynamics in the United States and how much is in Israel everyone is conscious of and following closely that the politics have changed, right? So you don't just have over the last 2 years, for instance, protests on college campuses about the conduct of the war. You have the Republican Party is very different than what it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, where the part of the Republican Party that is most supportive of President Trump, the populist wing, is not broadly as supportive of Israel as other parts of the American electorate. And some of those voices are very influential in the Trump administration. And so I'm just wondering how much they're conscious in the Netanyahu government that American support for Israel is not necessarily a given.
First of all, since you asked me about presently the Republican Party and the opinion within the Republican Party, I have to say one of the greatest failures and sins and totally, damaging politics of the Israeli government in the last few years was the separation, the unfriendly attitude towards the Democratic Party. And I think the lack of the genuine gratefulness for, in my mind, one of the greatest friends Israel had in its history. This is President Joe Biden. I gave credit to Trump, and he deserves it. But I can't take the credit from President Joe Biden, a genuine friend and a supporter, traditional supporter. I know him for 40 years. I remember him in different chapters in Israeli history. He was always absolutely committed, friendly, supportive, genuine, a real Zionist. Now, the fact that the Israeli government, first of all, the Israeli politics, unfortunately, has alienated the Democratic Party was, provocative against first President Obama, who was also very friendly to the State of Israel. No one remembers that President Obama, on top of the billions of dollars that Israel received from foreign aid from America every year, also financed the production and the manufacturing of Iron Dome, which is essential for the security of the State of Israel, on top of the foreign aid that America gave to the State of Israel. And everyone called him an enemy of the State of Israel because he didn't get along quite well with Netanyahu. So he, and definitely Joe Biden, an outstanding person, an outstanding friend of the State of Israel. Now, we lost the Democratic Party, Israel. Now, not all of the Republicans are as committed. And I'll tell you something. I wish I could say, I don't say he is not. I just wish I knew what exactly Trump thinks about us. And I'm not certain that I know. And I'll tell you something between us. I'm not certain that he knows. All right? So, yes, there is a big problem. And when I look today at the campuses in the United States of America, I remember the days that an Israeli coming to America to a campus was a big celebration. I'm not certain that this is the case today. And this is regrettable. So yes, we have lost the bulk of the public opinion support, the traditional public opinion support for the state of Israel, as a result of arrogance, as a result of overconfidence. Now, don't get me wrong. Israel was threatened. The terrorist organizations were murderous and atrocious and did terrible things which deserved a response, and a powerful response by Israel, and a justified response, because we couldn't tolerate it. No one would have tolerated it. Okay? And the Iranians were arrogant and manipulative and provocative, and they deserved a Israeli response. But Israel can't afford to remain forever an occupier of millions of Palestinians that are denied their rights for self-determination, for equality, for living in freedom, for living in a freedom of movement, without the intervention of Israeli soldiers on the daily life, every day and every moment. And if we will not understand it, we will lose what is left of the supporting public opinion in the United States of America.
So thank you for both of you, your very eloquent statements and direct answers to my questions. I'm going to, I believe we still have time. I've lost how much time we have. I want to answer some questions or get some questions from the audience who have written in advance what they want to hear about. And I'm just pulling at random. There is a question from Trudy Rubin of the Philadelphia Inquirer, who I appreciate as a fellow journalist. I can't really read her writing. It's worse than mine. But here's a question for both of you. It's very direct and specific. Should Marwan Barghouti be released? And who else could lead the PA in the future? Dr. Al-Kidwa.
Well, Ehud Olmert escapes the easy questions, right? Okay.
I will respond to it. Don't worry.
No, I think, yes, Marwan Barghouti needs to get released. 25 years in prison should be enough. I think that if he is released, he will be, busy with his own personal things. I might be wrong, but this is my guess. Who is going to lead the Palestinian Authority? We don't know. It depends on the presence of the right person, the right time, some luck, maybe destiny, whatever you want to call it. And of course, the result of the elections. After all, it's the right of the people to choose the leader in the ballot box.
Can I ask a quick follow-up before we get to your answer on this? Dr. Al-Kidwa, you, over the years, and especially the last couple of years, have been very critical of the Palestinian Authority, very critical of President Abbas, saying that actually the leadership needed to change. Now you're again part of the Palestinian Authority. What changed for you?
What changed for me is the change in the situation generally. And I think that growing feeling that we are all facing very dangerous situation that requires some kind of rethinking of our position and maybe rejoining, getting our ranks together and trying to confront what's happening. But one thing is clear: I did not change my positions. So yes, of course, the situation needs some kind of cooperation, some kind of getting together, but without changing our positions of principles, because these are important things that will remain valid.
Prime Minister, on Marwan Barghouti.
Yeah. Look, Marwan Barghouti is, as Dr. Al-Kidwa said, is arrested already for 25 years. To be honest with you, we released from jail on the Shalit deal, for instance, murderers, not less murderers than Barghouti.
Yahya Sinwar.
Yahya Sinwar himself. Yahya Sinwar was released by Netanyahu in the Shalit deal, which I refused to do, and he did it. I mean, I never said that I will destroy Hamas. The guy who said that he will destroy Hamas was Bibi, and then he gave them hundreds of millions of dollars through Qatar, and he released Yahya Sinwar and another 1,026 murderers with blood that covers everything, their hands and the bodies and everything. And some of them were not better than Marwan Barghouti. So there are two different questions here, and this is what the lady from the Philadelphia Inquirer, I think, wanted to hint at by asking these questions. Is Marwan Barghouti the potential candidate to become the leader of the Palestinian Authority? Look, who knows what Barghouti can do? He is popular when he's sitting in jail for 25 years. How capable after the 25 years and how powerful and how able he is to run the Palestinian Authority after 25 years being completely away, I'm not sure, and I think that there are some inflated expectations about his ability to do it. And as Dr. Al-Kidwa said correctly, at the end of the day, we would want that the Palestinians will elect their leaders in free democratic elections, because the free democratic elections within the Palestinian society is something that needs to be practiced in order to change the nature and the makeup of this society into something that can be more effective in running their own independent state. And therefore, one thing is to release Marwan Barghouti. If so many killers are released, I don't think that he is so different from the ones which are released now on a daily basis as part of this deal. So I don't know if I'm against it or I'm in favor of it. I just suggest that we will not create inflated expectations about his ability to be re-elected as the leader of the Palestinians once the Palestinians will be given the opportunity to run free elections in order to run their own affairs. And by the way, if we're talking about candidates for leadership amongst the Palestinian community, there is one sitting with us now. Why look for Marwan Barghouti? There is one free, available, and ready.
Fair question.
Fred,
Let's move to another question from the audience. In wake of the recent peace agreement between Israel and Hamas, what actions will be taken to resolve the humanitarian crisis in Gaza? For either of you.
well, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, of course, is very important. And of course, we all know that there are now entry of some additional trucks in the number of 400, 500. There isn't always smooth movement of those humanitarian trucks, but you know these things takes time, and we will see what's going to happen. But of course, it's imperative on the international community, and it's imperative on all of us to solve the humanitarian crisis and to start bringing the people in Gaza to some kind of situation that resembles normalcy.
I want to say this, look, the humanitarian crisis must be resolved rapidly, without any serious difficulties, and it is incumbent upon the State of Israel to make sure that it happens. Now, I'm not naive. Of course, the Hamas and the Hamas fighters were trying to make all kinds of provocations in order to grab the supplies of humanitarian needs that were coming to Gaza in order to guarantee what they need in order to sustain their own units which are spread in every part of Gaza. There were all kinds of provocations, all kinds of interventions and so on. Israel is in control, and Israel now is encircling all of Gaza. So it is incumbent upon Israel to make sure that these humanitarian needs will be provided. We can't afford that there will be one person that starves because of the lack of humanitarian supplies. And if the UN can be helpful, it should be the UN. If they some kind of an association of different countries, including the Arab countries and the Emirates and the Saudis that are anxious to provide these humanitarian needs, so that they have to be part of it. Israel needs to do everything in its power to make sure that it will happen, because we can't afford to allow one child or elder person starving because of the lack of supply.
Prime Minister Olmert, there's a question about the impact of the settlements on future negotiations, and specifically violent settlers. And I think back to about a year and a half ago we spoke. I interviewed you with my colleague Ronan Bergman for a story we wrote about the history of sort of impunity for violent settlers in Israel. And this is what you told us, and I'll quote directly from our story.
Does the question include already what I told you a year and a half ago?
What's that?
Or you have prepared the question
I prepared
according to what I said to you?
No, I wrote it down because I wanted to read it.
All right.
Because it was so eloquent. But this was, you said, talking about the mindset of the ultra-right in Israel, you said they want war, they want intifada, because it's the ultimate proof that there's no way of making peace with the Palestinians. And it's the only way that they can move forward, and that is to destroy them. That is the violent impulses and philosophy of elements of the ultra-right in Israel. And the question that a member of the audience put was, how does this philosophy and the fact that the violent settlers have acted with impunity for so long impact a future of an actual two-state solution or a Palestinian state?
Okay, I'll say two things, okay? So one good and one bad. So I'll start with the bad, okay? The Hilltop youth, which I call the atrocious youth, in the settlements in the West Bank, is murderous, is aggressive, is violent, and every day they are committing crimes of the worst possible kind against innocent people living in the West Bank, Palestinians, in an attempt to create an environment that will force them somehow out of the territories in order to clear the territories for the realization or the integration of these territories into Greater Israel. This is obnoxious. This is outrageous. This is against the basic fundamental values of decency and humanity, which I believe in and which most of the Israelis believe in. And nothing enough is done by the government to stop it. Why? Because some of the supporters and the inspirators of these settlers are members of the cabinet and are in charge of national security. And therefore they don't do what needs to be done. And we look at it every day and the heart is broken, because it happens in territories which are totally controlled by the state of Israel, and there is no excuse that can justify it. And the police is not doing enough, the army is not doing enough, and they are perpetrating atrocities on a daily basis. And unfortunately, I'm afraid that I'm amongst the very few who spell it out in the most explicit and manner, because I think that we can't afford to keep quiet. All our lives, all our history, we complain against those that kept quiet when we were persecuted. And we can't afford that. We will do it, and that the government of Israel and the leadership of Israel and the majority of Israel will not spell it out the way it really is. So yes, it is very bad. What is the good thing? The good thing is that I know that in spite of the fact that for the last 15 years the Israeli government was making almost every possible effort in order to expand the settlements and so on and so forth, for the purpose of making a possible future solution impossible. They make it impossible that the number of Israelis that will be living in the territories will be so that it will become irreversible. So I can tell you now, as true as 2025 October, okay? According to the peace plan that we have jointly published, Dr. Al-Kidwa and myself, which is on the basis of what I proposed to the Palestinians in 2008, 2009, okay? This is very important because not the whole history we were as inflexible and as extreme as we appear to be now. In 2008, I proposed Abu Mazen a comprehensive peace plan, two-state, on the basis of 67 borders, with the Arab side of Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine, and with the old city of Jerusalem under no exclusive political sovereignty, in order to create the openness of all the holy places for all believers without any political restrictions that are almost unavoidable under the present circumstances, and so on and so forth. Okay? So all this we proposed, and unfortunately at that time the Palestinians were not prepared to sign it. But as of today, in the 4.4% which we think Israel should annex from the West Bank and will, in return, swap the same size territory from what was Israel before 67 to become part of the Palestinian state, or the Palestinian state will still be identical in terms of the size of territory to the 67. In the 4.4%, more than 82 of the Israelis living across the Green Line live. So if we have this agreement, which is what we agree, most of the Israelis that live in the territories will still continue to live in where they live, but it will become, by agreement, part of the state of Israel. What will be left are 18%, which is a much smaller number of people, and there can be all kinds of arrangements by agreement that will settle this issue also. In other words, we haven't yet crossed the line of irreversibility in order to be able to agree on a comprehensive peace and establish a Palestinian state on the basis of the borders of 67, in spite of all the settlements and in spite of all the settlers. What we need to do now is to be able to stop the violence and the aggression perpetrated by these young terrorists, Jewish terrorists, against innocent Palestinians in the West Bank.
Dr. Al-Kidwa, if you want to follow up on the issue of the settlements and the settlers, I'll let you do that. I also feel like I was remiss not also asking you what I asked Prime Minister Olmert about how Palestinians view the politics of America changing over the last 2 years, whether you see it as changing possibly in the direction of a potential reality of a two-state solution, a Palestinian state, that there might be more American bipartisan support for this issue than there had been maybe over the last 10, 20 years.
Okay, with regard to the settlers, I can tell you that only today a settler, beat an old Palestinian woman with thick stick, and I think she lost conscious. So the image was horrible, was unbelievable, and it goes in the direction of the explanation made by former Prime Minister Olmert. Listen, settlements are illegal under international law. Geneva Conventions, all of them, mandate the high contracting parties not only to respect but to ensure respect of the conventions. The fourth one, prohibit the transfer of the citizens of the occupying power to the occupied territory. I mean, there is no buts and ifs. It's very clear, and it's illegal. And of course, now it's becoming serious problems. Now, as was said, nevertheless, we try to solve problems on the ground, and that's why there was an agreement on the swap of the 4.4% of the Palestinian territory. So I think things are becoming clearer and clearer to everybody. And after all, we can solve the problem. We can solve this problem. And we are not trying, I'm not trying to make anything illegal legal, but nevertheless, we are trying to find some solution of the difficult situation on the ground. Now, you also asked about something else, right? Would you remind me, please?
American politics and how
Yeah,
Palestinians
the American politics.
see what's
Listen,
happened the last 2 years.
listen. It wouldn't be correct for any Palestinian to consider the United States government as an honest broker. It's not possible because the successive American administration were biased in favor of Israel, were supportive of Israel against the Palestinians. So, of course, the United States is big power, and of course that it has to be a broker, but an honest broker, I don't think so, frankly. And I believe that this is the position of Palestinians in general. Now, of course, from time to time, things change, and you have some kind of bits and pieces of policies in favor of certain solutions. And now we have the hope that what we have, the plan that was presented by President Trump, might lead to something slightly better than the current situation. At least it would lead to the cessation of war in Gaza and maybe changing the situation in Gaza and beyond. And hopefully, we don't know yet, but hopefully towards the general solution of the conflict, Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And that means two-state solution. So the last piece of your question, whether we can see a movement by the US administration in the direction of accepting the statehood, Palestinian statehood, possibly. But it's zigzag also. You never know. You can't be sure, and you can't trust certain intentions. But from what we see now, there are some positive signals, and let's hope that this will be the case indeed.
We have only a couple more minutes left. I have one more question to both of you, and it's very open-ended, but it's, I think, a good way to end. The question is from Harlan Stone, and it says, what if we begin to have hope? I assume to mean, are we allowed right now at this moment to have a degree of hope for this conflict that's gone on for so long? Either one of you can start.
We can't afford not to have hope.
Oh la 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 la!
I'll tell you something. Pardon?
I said that exactly in an interview with Christiane Amanpour.
I'll tell you something. I've been through and through. I've seen everything. I've been, I had the privilege of working with few American presidents in my political life. I've been more than 50 years in the center of the national political life in the state of Israel. It's not a short time. It's longer than most of your presidents' career, definitely more than the present one. And I've seen everything. I remember terrible days of pain and despair in the Yom Kippur War. I remember the days prior to the 67 war when we in Israel had the feeling that Israel is about to be annihilated. And that I remember people in the streets of, in the parks of Tel Aviv digging in the ground big holes for mass burial of thousands of people that will be killed in the Egyptian attack against the state of Israel at that time. And this was terrible days. And I remember and of course, no one can forget and never will forget and never will forgive what happened on the 7th of October. But I'll tell you something, as I said before, Israel is an enormously powerful country, enormously resourceful, with the greatest youth, creative, imaginative, dynamic, energetic people that made Israel into one of the most successful countries in the world. The Palestinian people have enormously talented and people that are anxious to change the course of history of the Palestinian people. And therefore I say, we can't afford to lose the hope for something which will be built. We have to fight for it. We have to stand up front. We have not to hesitate. We have to be able to say things which sometimes infuriate people, but that needs to be said in order for ourselves to know where we are and where shall we go and what we need to do in order to make life happier for our children and for our grandchildren. And this is what I'm trying to do, and I'm not going to lose any of my optimism. I'm going to keep going on and on and on until, hopefully, sooner than later, we'll be able to celebrate peace and well-being and good relations for us and for everyone around us.
Dr. Al-Kidwa, I'll give you the last word.
Well, at the risk of being repetitious, I too would like to say that we cannot afford not to be hopeful, beginning with Gaza and then the overall political solution that would create peace and prosperity for everybody in the region. So thank you again, and I wish you all the best.
So on that hopeful note, we'll close. Thank you to both of our guests, and thank you to the audience.
Thank you very much.